The forest was quiet that night. Too quiet, Ethan walked along the narrow path, his boots crunching over dry leaves. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, leaving only darkness ahead. He had taken this path many times before, but tonight felt different. There was a strange chill in the air, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Then he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it. It was not the howl of a wolf or the cry of an owl. It was softer, weaker, almost like a whimper. Ethan stopped and listened again, his heart beginning to race. The sound came once more. This time with a tremble in it. It felt like a call for help. Ethan turned towards the noise, stepping off the main path. Branches scratched at his arms as he pushed deeper into the trees. The cry grew louder, leading him to a small clearing. There, in the center of the clearing, lay a creature unlike anything he had seen before. It was small, no bigger than a house. Its body was covered in dull, cracked scales, and its wings were torn and limp. It shivered violently, curling into itself as if trying to hide from the cold. But the most shocking thing were its eyes, wide, golden and filled with fear. Ethan froze, unsure if it was dangerous. But the creature made no move to attack. Instead, it let out another weak cry. Softer this time, Ethan took a slow step forward. Then another. When he got close, he noticed strange glowing marks along its neck and chest. They pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Ethan reached out without thinking. The moment his fingers brushed the mark, a flash of images burst into his mind. He saw skies filled with two suns, mountains of silver, and massive winged shapes flying together. Then came the image of fire raining from the sky, and the little creature falling through the flames. Ethan gasped and pulled his hand back. The glow on the creature's body dimmed even more. He looked around and heard voices in the distance, rough, angry voices, calling out in a language he did not understand. The sound of boots and weapons echoed closer. He realized they were searching for this creature. A part of him wanted to walk away, to avoid trouble, but another part couldn't leave something so helpless to die. Without thinking further, he took off his coat and wrapped it around the creature. It was so light he could barely feel its weight. The voices were getting nearer now. Ethan clutched the small bundle to his chest and moved quickly back through the trees. The branches scratched his face and roots caught his feet, but he didn't stop. The forest seemed darker than before, every shadow hiding danger. Finally, he broke through the tree line and saw the faint lights of his cabin. He rushed inside and shut the door. Breathing hard, he placed the creature gently on a blanket near the fireplace. It made a weak sound, curling tighter into the coat. Ethan grabbed more wood for the fire, feeding the flames until the cabin grew warm. The creature's golden eyes peeked out from the folds of the fabric. Watching him silently, he found a bowl and filled it with water, setting it down beside the small form. At first, it ignored the bowl. Then it slowly stretched its neck and took a shaky sip. Ethan smiled in relief, but when he reached out to touch it again, it flinched. He pulled his hand back and simply sat beside it. The rain started to fall outside, pattering against the roof. The wind howled through the trees, but inside the cabin was warm and still. Ethan could not stop staring at the creature. There was something about it that felt important. After a while, its breathing slowed, its eyes closed halfway, and its small chest rose and fell with each breath. Ethan leaned back, feeling exhaustion creeping in. His eyelids grew heavy, but he fought to stay awake. He didn't want to leave it alone, not even for a moment. Suddenly, he heard a faint sound, like a whisper. It came from the creature, though its mouth barely moved. The words were in a strange language he could not understand, but they carried a tone of sadness, almost like a goodbye. Ethan leaned closer, hoping to hear more. The creature's glow flickered, then steadied again. Its tail curled around itself, and its tiny wings twitched slightly. Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest, as if he had just made a promise without speaking. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain. He could not and would not give this creature up. No matter who came looking for it. Outside, the voices had faded into the distance. For now, they were safe. But Ethan knew it wouldn't last, the little dragon, because that's what he decided. It was let out a soft sound in its sleep, and in that moment, Ethan felt something he hadn't in a long time, a sense of purpose. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cabin, two lives had just become forever linked. The fire burned low, sending soft light dancing across the cabin walls. Ethan sat on the wooden floor, his back against the wall, his eyes fixed on the tiny dragon. It lay curled on the blanket, wrapped in his coat, breathing slowly. Its scales looked dull, but in the warm light he could see faint hints of gold beneath the cracks. Every now and then, its small body twitched, as if it were dreaming. Ethan didn't know what dragons dreamed about. Maybe it was remembering the strange skies he had seen in that vision. Maybe it was remembering the fire, the falling, the pain. He shook his head, trying to push away the images. Whatever had happened to it, one thing was clear. It was running from something. He stood and went to his small cupboard. There was not much food. A half loaf of bread, some dried meat, a jar of honey. He poured warm water into a small bowl and placed it beside the blanket. Then he tore a piece of bread and soaked it in the water. The dragon opened one golden eye. Watching him, Ethan moved slowly, holding the soft bread near its mouth at first. The dragon turned its head away. Then, as if deciding to trust him just a little, it took a small bite. It chewed slowly, almost as if it was not sure what to do with food. After a few more bites, it let out a tiny, satisfied sound. Ethan smiled and sat back, feeling oddly proud. He could see a little more life in its eyes now. The glow from the strange markings along its neck pulsed faintly. When he reached out, the dragon didn't pull away this time. Instead, it let him gently touch its scales. The moment his fingers made contact, another flash hit his mind. He saw a huge stone hall, lit with blue fire. Rows of winged creatures stood in silence, bowing to a larger dragon covered in silver armor. Then came a sudden explosion, fire tearing through the walls. The vision ended, leaving Ethan's heart pounding. He pulled his hand back, staring at the dragon. "You're not just an animal, are you?" he whispered. The dragon tilted its head, almost as if it understood. It let out a soft trill, a sound that was neither threat nor fear, more like agreement. Outside, the wind howled. The rain turned into a heavy storm, hammering against the roof. Ethan added more wood to the fire, watching the flames climb higher. The cabin felt safe, but he knew danger was still out there. Those voices in the forest earlier had not been a dream. The dragon lifted its head suddenly. Its ears, or what looked like ears, twitched. It stared at the door, its glow brightening. Ethan followed its gaze, but heard nothing. Still, he felt a strange unease in the air. He went to the window and peered out into the darkness. The forest was a shadowy blur, the rain making it hard to see. But for a brief moment, he thought he saw movement, a tall shape between the trees, standing still, watching. When he blinked, it was gone. He stepped back from the window, his jaw tight. The dragon hadn't looked away from the door. Ethan reached for the small hunting knife on the table. He wasn't sure if it would do much against whoever or whatever was out there. But it was better than nothing. Minutes passed. The storm's roar covering all other sounds. Slowly, the dragon lowered its head again. Its glow dimmed, and it curled back into the blanket. Ethan let out a slow breath, setting the knife down for now. The danger seemed to have passed. He sat beside the dragon again, Its breathing was calmer now, almost peaceful. Ethan felt his own eyes growing heavy. He hadn't realized how exhausted he was. The day had been long, and the night felt even longer. As he drifted into sleep, the last thing he saw was the faint golden light from the dragon's markings. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and warm. The sound of the storm faded in his mind, replaced by the crackle of the fire for the first time in a long while. Ethan didn't feel alone somehow. He knew this little creature had already changed his life. In the middle of the night, a faint noise stirred him. He opened his eyes and saw the dragon staring at him, wide awake. It didn't move, but its gaze was fixed on him, unblinking. Ethan didn't feel fear, only a strange sense of understanding. As if the creature was memorizing his face, it let out a tiny spark from its mouth. The faintest flicker of flame. Ethan chuckled quietly. "Guess you're feeling better," he whispered. The dragon tilted its head, then rested it back down. Ethan closed his eyes again, letting sleep pull him under. The fire kept burning. The rain kept falling. But outside, beyond the safety of the cabin walls, something in the darkness moved again. The watchers had not gone far, and they would be back. Ethan just didn't know when. The morning light crept through the cabin window. Ethan woke to find the tiny dragon sitting upright on the blanket. Its golden eyes watched him closely, unblinking. The glow from the strange markings on its neck was brighter than the night before. It looked stronger now, though its wings still drooped weakly at its sides. Ethan stretched and gave a small smile. "Morning, Oryx," he said, without thinking. The dragon tilted its head, as if trying to understand Oryx. He repeated slowly, pointing at it. The little creature blinked, then let out a soft trill. From that moment, the name stuck. Ethan didn't know why, but it felt right. He got up and began preparing breakfast. The smell of sizzling bread and eggs filled the air. Oryx sniffed the air curiously, shifting closer to the table. When Ethan handed it a small piece of cooked egg, Oryx took it gently in its mouth. The moment it swallowed, a faint spark escaped. From its nose, Ethan laughed softly, shaking his head. "Careful, you'll set the cabin on fire," he joked, but strange things began happening after breakfast. The fire in the fireplace burned higher without him adding wood. The steam from his tea swirled in odd patterns as if dancing. When Ethan stepped outside to fetch water, the wind suddenly shifted. It blew directly at his back. Warm and gentle. He glanced at Oryx, who sat on the windowsill watching him. The glow in its markings pulsed in time with the flicker of the fire. When Ethan returned inside, he found his small stack of wood dry. It had been soaked from last night's storm. Yet, now it was bone dry. He realized this couldn't be a coincidence. Later that afternoon, Ethan decided to step outside for some air. Oryx followed him to the doorway, but stopped there. Its eyes scanned the trees. Wary, Ethan sat on the porch, sharpening his hunting knife. He had no plans to hunt. It was just habit. Suddenly, Oryx hissed softly. Ethan looked up and saw a large shadow moving among the trees. It was gone in an instant, but the air felt heavier. Ethan's grip tightened on the knife. Before he could move, Oryx leaped forward onto the porch. Its tiny body seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. The glow of its markings flared brighter. Ethan felt the air around him grow warm, almost electric. Then he saw it. The trees at the prees, at the prees, at the prees. At the prees, at the prees, at the prees, at the lies, on Sweeth Lee, and leaves a rich, long-lasting color. The abelding law last in color. The pre at the prees at the beld, lies at law. Laws at the lies at laws at the law. Also a light. They side some lies at their outs. My side aside, my subid, like by mide, ed, to lives. With it the lead, L of cocat, They are so slow-sided. Kamiensas ka sakrik it's slits to sick but to sit least it's that I sit sit could sick instead of this it greets to sits that this is it's cut that edge of the clearing shaking without wind. The shadow appeared again. It was one of the hunters from last night. A tall man with pale, scarred skin. His eyes were cold. Scanning the cabin with a predator's patience, Ethan stepped forward, blocking. The view inside, the hunter didn't speak. He simply gave a thin smile before fading back into the forest. Oryx growled low, a deep sound for something so small. Ethan knelt beside it, placing a hand gently on its head. "It's all right, I'm here," he said, though he wasn't sure it was true. When night fell, the strange events continued. As Ethan sat by the fire, Oryx climbed onto his lap without warning. Its body was warm, almost too warm, and its breathing steady. Suddenly, Ethan's mind filled with flashes again. This time, the visions were different. He saw himself standing beside a fully grown oryx. They were on a cliff, high above the clouds. Below them was a massive city made of crystal and fire. Hundreds of dragons circled in the sky, roaring in unison. Then came an image of Oryx breathing fire, so bright it lit up the stars. Ethan blinked hard, and the vision vanished. He looked down at the small creature curled in his arms. Its eyes were half closed, but he could feel the power inside it, a power that didn't belong to this world. He knew then that Oryx was far more than a lost animal. Later that night, a knock came at the door. Ethan froze. Oryx lifted its head. Sharply, markings glowing brighter. When Ethan opened the door, 3 men stood there. The hunters, their leader, stepped forward, a smirk on his face. "We're looking for something," the man said in a cold voice. "A dangerous beast," he added. Pretending to be concerned, Ethan forced himself to stay calm. "Haven't seen anything like that," he lied. The man's eyes narrowed, scanning the room behind him. But before he could step inside, Oryx let out a low rumble. The glow from its markings spilled across the floor. The hunter's gaze flicked to the light for a moment. Ethan thought he saw recognition in the man's eyes. Then the man smiled faintly, as if confirming a suspicion. Without a word, the hunters turned and left. Ethan shut the door quickly, his heart pounding. When he looked at Oryx, the glow had faded. The little dragon curled back into the blanket, looking tired. Ethan knew the visit hadn't been harmless. They would be back. He sat beside Oryx for a long time. Outside, the forest was silent again, but inside, Ethan felt the cabin was no longer safe. He didn't know how much time they had, only that when the hunters returned, they would not come alone. The night after the hunters came, Ethan barely slept. Every creak of the cabin made his eyes snap open. He kept the fire burning low, the soft orange glow spilling across the room. Oryx lay near the hearth, but its breathing was slower than before. Something about it worried Ethan. The little dragon looked weaker, not stronger. He moved closer, placing his hand gently on its side. The scales felt warm, but the glow in its markings had dimmed. Ethan remembered how bright they had been when the hunter stood at the door. It was as if the light had drained from Oryx just to protect him. That thought made Ethan's chest tighten. He decided he couldn't just sit and watch it fade. He went to his old wooden chest and pulled out a weathered leather book. It was a survival guide he had inherited from his grandfather. Inside were notes about healing plants, rare minerals, and strange remedies. Some were for normal animals, but a few mentioned creatures not of this world. One drawing caught his eye. A plant with silver leaves and red veins. The book claimed it could restore the life force of beings with elemental breath. It grew only near places where lightning had struck the ground. Ethan knew of a place like that deep in the forest, but it was a half-day's walk through dangerous terrain. He looked at Oryx. still curled and breathing shallow. "I'll get it for you," he whispered. The dragon's eyes opened halfway, as if it understood. It made a faint sound, not a roar. Not a hiss, but something softer. It almost sounded like a promise. At first light, Ethan gathered his pack. He wrapped Oryx in the blanket and placed it in a warm corner near the fire. Before leaving, he knelt beside it. "You'll be safe here until I'm back," he said, but in truth, he wasn't sure if that was true. The forest was damp from recent rains. Mist clung to the ground, swirling around his boots as he walked. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant cry of a bird. The deeper he went, the darker it became. Trees blocked out the sun, and the air grew colder. Hours passed before he reached the clearing. The lightning-struck tree stood blackened and split in two at its roots, just as the book described. Grew the silverleaf plant. He knelt and began to gather the leaves carefully, but a sound behind him made him freeze. Footsteps slow, deliberate. He turned and saw one of the hunters from before. The man's eyes locked on the plant in Ethan's hand. "So, you do have it," the man said, his voice cold. Ethan didn't answer, slipping the plant into his pack. The hunter stepped closer. "Where is it?" he demanded. Ethan kept his face still. "Don't know what you're talking about." He lied. The man's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "Lie all you want," the hunter said. "We'll find it," before Ethan could react. The man turned and vanished into the trees. Ethan didn't waste time. He ran. He could almost feel eyes on his back the whole way home. When he reached the cabin, his heart was pounding. Inside, Oryx was still where he had left it, but its breathing was shallower. Ethan crushed the silver leaves and mixed them with warm water. He held the bowl to Oryx's mouth. The dragon sniffed, then slowly began to drink. At first, nothing happened. Then the glow in its markings flickered faintly. Its eyes opened wider, more alert. A small spark escaped its mouth, just like that. First night, Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "You scared me," he said quietly. Oryx tilted its head, studying him. Then, without warning, it moved closer and rested its head on his knee. The warmth from its body seeped through his clothes. It was the first time Oryx had touched him willingly. Ethan sat still, afraid to break the moment. He felt something shift between them. Not just trust, but something deeper, a silent bond forming without words. Outside, the forest wind picked up, rattling the cabin walls. But inside, for that moment, there was peace. The peace didn't last. That night, a strange low hum filled the air. Ethan stepped outside and saw lights moving in the clouds. They weren't lightning, and they weren't from any plane he knew. A cold realization settled in his mind. The hunters weren't the only ones searching. When he returned inside, Oryx was standing. Its wings were spread slightly, its glow brighter than ever. It looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite explain. Then it moved toward the door as if ready to leave. Ethan stepped in front of it. Shaking his head, "No," he said firmly. "If you go out there, they'll find you." Oryx hesitated, then lowered its head. Ethan placed his hand gently on the glowing mark. "I'll keep you safe," he whispered, and in that moment, he meant every word. The air was restless that night. Ethan could feel it pressing against the cabin walls. Oryx sat near the window, eyes locked on the dark forest beyond. Its glow was dim, but the way its tail twitched told Ethan it was on edge. He didn't need to ask why he felt it too. It started with a faint sound in the distance, not the usual rustle of wind or call of a night bird. This was sharper. Heavier boots striking wet ground. Then came another sound, low and mechanical, a slow hum that made the cabin floor vibrate beneath his feet. Ethan went to the door and peered out through the mist. He saw faint lights moving between the trees. At first, he thought they were lanterns. But the glow was too steady. 2 white machines, he realized, and they were heading straight for him. Oryx let out a deep growl. Its eyes burned with gold. Light, the markings on its body began to pulse faster. Ethan grabbed his pack from under the table. Inside were a few tools, some food, and the silverleaf plant he had saved. He turned to Oryx. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice firm. The dragon didn't hesitate. It leaped onto the table and then to the floor. Ethan opened the back door, cold night air rushing in. They slipped out into the shadows, leaving the cabin behind. The forest swallowed them immediately. Mist curled around their feet. The hum from the machines grew louder. Ethan could see flashes of metal between the trees. They were moving fast. Cutting through the undergrowth with ease, he kept low, moving quickly but carefully. Every step mattered. One snap of a branch could give them away. Oryx stayed close, its movements silent. The glow from its markings dimmed until it was almost invisible. Even in the dark, Ethan could feel its warmth beside him. Then a voice rang out behind them, the same cold tone he had heard before. "Find the human. The creature is with him." The man barked. Ethan's stomach tightened. They had known exactly where to look. A sudden beam of light cut through the mist. It swept across the forest, searching. Ethan pulled Oryx behind a fallen tree. The beam passed just inches from them. He held his breath until it moved away, but the reprieve didn't last. The hum of the machines was now joined by the sound of hounds. Deep, mechanical snarls filled the air. They were hunting machines, built to track and capture. Ethan knew. They couldn't outrun them for long. He scanned the trees, searching for a path. A faint memory came to him, an old trail leading to the river. The current there was strong, and the water would mask their scent. He pointed the way. And Oryx darted forward. Ethan followed close behind, his heart hammering. The sound of pursuit grew louder. Branches snapped, engines roared. One of the hunting machines burst into view. Its metallic body gleamed in the moonlight. Red sensors glowed where eyes should be. Ethan didn't think he grabbed a heavy branch from the ground. As the machine lunged, he swung with all his strength. The branch splintered. But the hit made the machine stumble. Oryx leaped at it, releasing a sudden burst of heat from its mouth. The metal hissed, steam rising, and the machine backed away. "Go!" Ethan shouted. They ran until the sound of rushing water filled the air. The river glimmered faintly in the dark. Ethan waded in first, the cold biting into his legs. Oryx followed. Swimming with surprising ease, the current pulled them downstream. Ethan kept one hand on Oryx, making sure it stayed close behind them. The hunting machines reached the riverbank, but they didn't follow. Their lights scanned the surface. Then slowly began to fade into the mist. When they reached the far bank, Ethan pulled himself onto the muddy shore. He collapsed onto his knees. Catching his breath, Oryx shook the water from its scales, glowing faintly again for a moment. There was only the sound of the river. No machines, no voices, just the quiet night. Ethan knew they had escaped for now, but the cabin was lost. Everything he had built, everything safe, was gone. He looked at Oryx, who stared back with steady, golden eyes. There was no going back, only forward. "We keep moving," Ethan said softly. Oryx gave a small trill in reply. Together. They turned toward the dark forest ahead. The hunters would follow, and others would come. But Ethan had already made his choice. He would protect Oryx at any cost. The forest was quiet again, but Ethan knew it was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. He and Oryx had walked for hours after leaving the river. The mist had thinned, and the moon now lit their path in silver light. They found shelter in the mouth of an old mine, its wooden beams worn with age. It wasn't much, but it kept the wind out. Ethan gathered a few dry branches and lit a small fire. Oryx sat across from him, its golden eyes reflecting the flames. The glow in its markings was steady now, brighter than he had ever seen. It felt like Oryx was waiting for something. Ethan leaned forward, curiosity gnawing at him. "You're not just a creature they want to capture," he said quietly. Oryx tilted its head, as if deciding how much to show. Then, without warning, it stepped closer. Its markings began to flare with golden light. The air around them grew warmer, humming with energy. Ethan felt a pressure in his head, not painful, more like a door opening. Images flooded his mind again. He saw a massive hall of crystal arches stretching into the clouds. Dragons of every color lined the walls, bowing to a single figure. That figure was Oryx, but not the small, wounded creature before him. This Oryx was enormous, its wings stretching like sails. A crown of light shimmered above its head. It roared, and the very ground shook beneath it. The vision shifted, and the skies turned red. War had come. Ethan saw alien ships darken the sky. He saw fire raining down on the crystal city, dragons falling from the clouds, their wings torn, and Oryx still regal, still fierce, being struck by a beam of searing light. The vision changed again. Oryx, smaller now, injured, fleeing into the void of space. A group of smaller ships chased it. One beam hit, sending it crashing toward a blue and green world Earth. The last image was of Oryx lying in the forest, its glow dimming when the vision ended. Ethan was back in the mine. He was breathing hard, his hands gripping the dirt floor. Oryx watched him silently. You're some kind of royal," Ethan said slowly. The dragon blinked, then lowered its head, as if confirming. Ethan sat back, the weight of it sinking in. "They're not just hunting you because you're rare," he said. "They're hunting you because you're a threat." Oryx's markings pulsed once in agreement. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. This was bigger than anything he had imagined. "Why me?" he asked, almost to himself. Another wave of warmth spread through the air. This time, the vision was shorter. He saw himself in the forest, that first night. He saw how Oryx's glow had flickered back to life when Ethan wrapped it in his coat. It wasn't random. Something about him had kept Oryx alive. Ethan swallowed hard, looking at the small dragon. "So we're stuck with each other," he said with a faint smile. Oryx made a soft sound, a sound that almost felt like a laugh. The moment was cut short by a distant noise. Ethan froze, listening. It wasn't the hum of machines this time. It was a deep, thrumming sound, like the beating of enormous wings. He stepped to the edge of the mine entrance and looked up. Against the moonlight, massive shapes moved through the clouds. Not hunters, not machines, but other dragons. Oryx stepped forward, its glow surging so bright it lit the mine walls. Ethan turned, shocked by the change in its posture. It wasn't the small, timid creature he had first found. The golden light wrapped around Oryx like armor. Its eyes burned with power for the first time. Ethan felt the raw presence of a ruler. It stepped toward him, pressing its head lightly against his chest. Then another vision struck him. He saw Earth, peaceful and whole. He saw the same alien fleet that had attacked Oryx's home, turning its weapons toward Earth. And he saw Oryx, fully grown, standing in their way, but only if it survived the next few days, only if it escaped the hunters and made it to safety. Ethan's jaw tightened. They weren't just running anymore. They were racing against time. If Oryx died, Earth would lose a protector it didn't even know it had. He turned back toward the fire. "We'll get you to safety," he said firmly. Outside, the sound of wings grew louder, but it wasn't friendly. The shapes were wrong. These were black, angular, and sharp. The rival dragons from Oryx's vision. They had found them. Oryx's glow flared. Ethan grabbed his pack and kicked dirt over the fire. There was no time left. The mine walls shook as something landed outside. Ethan met Oryx's eyes. "Ready?" he asked. The dragon's gaze was fierce. Unafraid, it stepped forward, wings spreading slightly despite their wounds. Ethan felt the bond between them tighten. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The ground shook as the first rival dragon landed outside the mine. Its scales were black as midnight, its eyes like burning coals. Two more shapes circled above, their wings cutting through the night air with thunderous beats. Ethan felt the vibrations in his chest, the pressure of power he could barely comprehend. Oryx stood at the entrance, its glow burning brighter than ever. The black dragon roared, the sound rolling like a wave through the forest. Ethan's knees wanted to buckle, but he forced himself to stand. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was part of this fight. The other dragons landed, forming a half circle around the mine entrance. Their teeth bared, their movements sharp and predatory. One stepped forward, speaking in that strange language Ethan had heard before. Oryx's growl was deep, dangerous. Ethan didn't know the words, but he could feel the meaning, a threat. The glow in Oryx's markings flared so brightly that it lit the entire clearing. The rival dragon stepped back slightly, wary of the light. Then, without warning, the first one lunged. Ethan dove to the side as Oryx met it head-on. Despite its small size, Oryx moved with speed and precision. Its tail whipped around, striking the attacker's jaw. A burst of heat erupted from Oryx's mouth, forcing the black dragon to retreat. The other two charged together. Ethan grabbed a fallen branch, lit it in the small fire they had left behind. With a shout, he swung it toward one of the attackers. It hissed and pulled back, not expecting the human to fight. Oryx took the opening to slam into its side, but the last dragon was fast, too fast. It dodged Oryx's strike and pinned the small dragon to the ground. Ethan's heart stopped. The black dragon's jaws opened wide, ready to bite. Ethan ran forward without thinking, driving his burning branch into its eye. The creature roared. In pain, jerking back, Oryx rolled to its feet, wings flaring. The glow from its body exploded outward in a wave of golden light. The rival dragons recoiled, their bodies shaking under the force. Ethan could feel the heat and energy pouring off Oryx. Then came the roar, a sound unlike any he had heard. It was not just a cry of battle, but of command. The rival dragons froze, their eyes flickering with hesitation. Oryx stepped forward, its glow becoming blinding. Ethan shielded his eyes, but he could still see the golden shape in the light. The black dragons backed away. Step by step, then, with a final snarl, they took to the sky. Their dark shapes vanished into the clouds. The forest grew quiet again. The only sound, the crackle of the dying fire. Ethan dropped the branch, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Oryx turned to him, its glow still fierce but no longer overwhelming. It stepped closer, pressing its head against his chest. Ethan rested his hand on the warm scales. "Yeah," he whispered. "We made it, for a long moment." They stayed like that, breathing in sync. The danger was gone, but Ethan knew it wouldn't be forever. The hunters, the machines, the rival dragons, they would try again. But something had changed tonight. Oryx was no longer just surviving. It was reclaiming its strength. And Ethan was no longer just a man protecting a lost creature. They left the mine before dawn. The forest was bathed in early light. Birdsong returned to the air as if the land itself was calmer. They followed a ridge until the river came into view again. On the far bank, smoke rose from where his cabin had been. Ethan stared at it for a long time. A part of him ached for the life he had lost, but Oryx nudged his side gently. He looked down into those golden eyes and saw something new, a promise, not just survival, but a future. They made camp on higher ground. From there, they could see miles of forest and river. Oryx curled beside the fire, its tail wrapped neatly. Around itself, the glow from its markings was steady, warm. Ethan felt the bond between them stronger than ever as he sat watching the sunrise. A voice brushed against his mind. It was soft but clear. "Home," it said. Ethan turned to Oryx. Realizing the word had come from the dragon, his chest tightened, not with fear, but with something like pride. Home wasn't his cabin anymore. It wasn't a place made of wood and walls. It was here, with this strange and powerful creature. At his side, they had survived the hunters, the machines, and the rival dragons. And whatever came next, they would face it together. The golden light from Oryx's body shimmered in the morning air. Ethan knew they still had a long road ahead. But for the first time since this began, he felt ready. Oryx lifted its head, eyes locked on the horizon. And with a slow, steady beat of its wings, it rose into the air. Ethan watched it fly. The sunlight catching on its scales, it circled once above him, letting out a single, clear note. Then it landed beside him again, as if to say it wasn't going anywhere without him. Ethan smiled. They were home, in the only way that mattered.